with many other sports like football, rugby and boxing, there were moves aimed at creating rules and a governing body for Shinty. And as in most areas of Highland life, it was the lairds who took the lead. Of course, at this point in the latter part of the Victorian era, all things Highland were in fashion. So it was that in 1893, here in the grand surroundings of the library at Balliville House near Kingussie, the first rules were drafted. Soon afterwards, the Camanachd Association was born. Until then, Shinty had been unregulated and unrestrained. 50 or more players made up each side. A match would last all afternoon, and the pitch, well, there wasn't one. Any piece of land, miles long perhaps, served as the battleground. The rules were actually drafted in this room. How important an event was that? Some of your forebears were actually involved in that, weren't they?
I think it was really a very important event because it was a hurly-burly game before that. There's a record of a village near here called Glasgow where once every 3 months or so they had a 50-a-side Shinty game. And they used to have it on a Sunday, and the minister protested that it mustn't start before 2 o'clock. But you can imagine a 50-a-side game, and even if it was steeped in tradition, was somewhat uncoordinated. And if that was going to survive into the modern era, it had to be regulated to something that people could recognize as a pattern and convey from one village to another with no change in rules. So I think it was an important event.
Captain Archibald McCraw Chisholm became the first chief of the Camanachd Association, and the other influential gentlemen, as the Inverness Courier of the time described them, were Lord Lovett, elected president, and Macpherson of Balliville, one of 3 vice-presidents, all incidentally named Macpherson.
In spite of so much historical criticism, it was not feudal, it was patriarchal here. And people did look to the laird to give a lead in all their activities, social, sporting, whatever it was. You would find that the lairds very often were behind the setting up of golf courses. In the same way, they got together to set up and coordinate the Camanachd Association. These were lairds from the west, from north of the Great Glen, and from the Central Highlands, and they wanted to have a universality of it through the Highlands.
One of the main spurs to developing a proper code for the game was a challenge match played at Kingussie on the 3rd of April 1893 between the home side and Glasgow Cowal. It was described as one of the finest exhibitions of Shinty skills ever seen, despite the ball being smaller than Kingussie were used to and the southerners having lighter camons. It was realised that for Shinty to flourish into the 20th century, everyone would have to play to the same rules with a standard ball and sticks and on a pitch of an agreed size. That challenge match was recreated this year. The hairstyles may have changed, but not the on-field commitment required of a Shinty player. This time, though, Kingussie claimed victory, avenging a 1-0 defeat of 100 years ago.
To get on an organised basis, as we had to do, and to spread the game, then these people who got together 100 years ago had some tremendous foresight, and they saw that they had some potential here to make a new sport. When the South teams, who had their own particular brand of skills, came up and played the North teams, they found it difficult to compete. The North teams were allowed to kick the ball. One of the rules in particular was when the ball went out of play over the sideline, the first man that got there, he won the hit in, you know. So these things are obviously nonplussed some of the players, and they decided that with their committees that we've got to get together and sort this out and have regular rules, and that's exactly what they did 100 years ago here in Bainach.
The game was by no means confined to the north. Highland exiles were organising Shinty clubs not only in Glasgow and Edinburgh, but as far afield as Manchester and London. But in time, Shinty was to retreat largely to northern and western Scotland as clubs came and went. While Kingussie remain, their historic opponents Glasgow Cowal have long since disbanded.